What's going on YouTube? It's Teach, back again with another video, and today I bring you another Grade the Mock, as today we are reviewing Sam Monson of Pro Football Focus's latest 2023 mock draft. Hopefully you all enjoy. Be sure to hit that like button if you do. Subscribe if you're new, looking for more draft content, more football coverage in general, and of course, leave me your thoughts down below. Who went too high, who falls too low, and then who's your favorite team? And would you be excited about the first round pick that Sam Monson gave your squad? Let's waste no time. The only thing I really know about this is what we see right here in these bullet points, and then maybe a little bit of the QB picks that I've had unfortunately spoiled for me. But we start with the Panthers drafting Anthony Richardson. This is kind of an interesting idea, and I've had some subscribers comment and want to see this in mock. So I was kind of excited when I heard this, as I don't know if I'm going to have time to do it because we only have 3 more mocks planned out before we get to the actual NFL draft and that live show. I'm going to be live round 1 as well as day 2 for the NFL draft. So hopefully have you guys join us for that. But this was a kind of a cool way for me to explore it without it being my mock draft. But I mean, it does kind of make sense from the standpoint of Carolina gives up future draft capital in DJ Moore to move up to 1 from 9. So take the biggest swing of the bat as possible. Stroud, Young, they come with the highest floors, so they're kind of the safest bets. You can get a kind of see where this rebuild's heading. But could you also build, an offense around Anthony Richardson, and by year 2, maybe year 3, really be tapping into that outside, and maybe he does project to be, the more high-end play versus Young or Stroud. It's kind of an interesting play. It comes with a lot of risk because, if this, backfires, then, short-term life in Carolina for Frank Reich, and Scott Fitterer is almost certainly out the door. But at the same time, he could have, a higher range of outcomes than, Young and Stroud. And plus, all the talk about, Frank Reich likes these big quarterbacks. Well, Anthony Richardson is even bigger than CJ Stroud. I would argue has a stronger arm, more work to be done as a passer, and throwing with touch, and working out the footwork from snap and snap out. So more work to be done, but at that point, he's kind of more the prototypical size plus the speed aspect of it. So I'm all here for it. If Carolina makes that pick on night 1 of the NFL draft, I'm losing my mind. It's going to be a really fun draft night. Next up, Houston takes Bryce Young. I think this makes a lot of sense. I could see the argument for CJ Stroud here. I think both could run that, Shanahan-esque offense, assuming Bobby Slowick does bring, a lot of those principles and concepts over from San Francisco. My only concern about Young here is, how many times have I seen Brandon Ayuk catch that slant from Jimmy Garoppolo or whoever was under center, Brock Purdy, down the stretch last year in San Francisco? That feels like a pass that, could lead to a lot of batted passes from Bryce Young, just given he is a little bit smaller versus Stroud at 6'2", 6'3", 210, 215 pounds, more prototypical size. But other than that, Bryce Young's pocket feel, escapability, very, very accurate. May not be Stroud level of accurate, but he's not far off. Strong arm, may not be Anthony Richardson or Will Levis, but it's not a problem either. So to me, he's just kind of the safest play of all these guys, has the highest floor, so solid in so many different ways, but then has kind of that it factor and the feel for the pocket too. That's what makes, a 5'10", 185-pound quarterback, still kind of work, and why he hasn't been, destroyed by injuries already. So love that pick, and it's what I would do at 1. So can't hate on Houston doing it at 2. Colts then trade up, move up a spot. I could totally see this playing out. Plan on doing the same thing in my upcoming mock. Just because for the Cardinals, it's worst comes to worst, we're gonna take the same player we would at 3 and then garner an extra, 3rd round pick out of it. So yeah, let's do it. And then they could might even explore this in this upcoming mock. Well, they double trade down, move down to 4, and then slide back with the Raiders at 7 or Tennessee at 11 maybe, and then draft a corner or something like that. That could be really interesting. But Colts move up, they draft Will Levis. I could see where, especially with Anthony Richardson off the board, this makes it even easier to make Will Levis the pick. But him versus Stroud here is really interesting. I think a lot of Colts fans would prefer Stroud over Levis, which I get it. Does come with a higher floor, but I do think Levis comes with higher upside. And I think these two guys are coming from drastically different college situations, and I think that has to be taken into context. Levis is coming from an offense with probably the worst offensive line in the SEC, if not the worst, then one of maybe the worst pass-catching core around him in the SEC, all while playing in the best conference in college football. Also a step down in the play calling department, in my opinion, not only with the plays themselves, but the design of it, when they're called, all of it, really. So I think the situation just kind of deteriorated around Will Levis. Plus, change in OCs, got to learn a new playbook. That kind of comes with its drawbacks as well. So I think at the NFL level, he's just going to be a better version of what we kind of saw in college, and I think we'll see his potential maximized and really come to a realization at the NFL level, especially in Indianapolis. Michael Pittman Jr., already the best pass catcher Will Levis has had during any point of college to pro. Offensive line will be better than what he had either year at Kentucky, right? So we love the situation, and the Colts send head coach, OC, QB coach, basically the whole staff, the whole crew, even the front office goes out to Will Levis in his pro day. So they seem to be interested, and if Richardson's off the board, I could totally see where Levis is the pick. Though him versus Stroud, I think a lot of Colts fans would prefer Stroud, but personally, I have Levis ranked higher, so that would be my lean as well. Cardinals then take Will Anderson. Yep, you trade down, you get an extra third-round pick or whatever it comes down to in the Jimmy Johnson trade chart, and you still get to draft the same guy. Get a blue chipper, cornerstone defensive piece, throw him in the rotation. He's probably headlining a rotation of Najee Sanders and Cam Thomas, and we start to figure out who's going to be sticking across that defensive line in Arizona. To me, it's probably about a 2-year retool for Jonathan Gannon and crew, and Monty Austinforth, the new GM. But play your cards right. 2 years might be all you need. And getting a cornerstone building block on the defensive side like Will Anderson, second best non-quarterback in my opinion in this year's class, right behind Jalen Carter, but it's that close. I think that goes a long way to getting that defense back on track and kind of kickstarting this 2-year retool. Seattle then takes Jalen Carter. I get it. I've already had a lot of Seahawks fans tell me this is not going to happen, and then I've had some Seahawks fans tell me that, aside of character issues, they would love this fit on their defense. So I've heard both sides of this. The fit is hard to deny. You pair him up with Draymond Jones, the pass rush upside from the interior defensive line is insane. We see the impact that, Jeffrey Simmons, Christian Wilkins, Aaron Donald, all these guys have. Well, imagine having 2 of those force multipliers on the inside. That's a lot to handle. So the fit, again, is undeniable. Also, you're going to get some run defense reinforcements here with Jalen Carter. It just comes down to how you feel about the maturity, concerns. He's already settled everything when it comes to the incident post-national championship and the loss of life there and, everything that's been kind of lingering over him, plus then a bad pro day. But I think that's, kind of a separate thing. I guess there is correlation, but that's not what we're talking about. But nevertheless, that's already been settled. So now it just comes down to, is this a trend or was this a one-time kind of really sad, unfortunate, and poor use of judgment, right? I don't interview him. I haven't talked to him in person, so I can't comment on that. But Seattle, and I think Detroit, if they were to stick and pick at 6, which they are not here in this mock, I think they built up enough goodwill. I trust both those coaches to where if they think that it can work out with Jalen Carter, I would trust their judgment. And again, the fits are undeniable in Seattle and Detroit. Titans move up from 11 and they draft CJ Stroud. I love this. And look, weird things happen in the draft. If you told me Justin Fields was going to fall out of the top 10, I would have told you you're crazy. He was the number 3 player on my board that year. Weird stuff happens, and it's truly, kind of a roll of the dice oftentimes. That's where it's a little tough. You get some feedback and you're like, no way will this ever happen. I had Jets fans last year. No way we're going to take a corner. You drafted the best rookie of the 2022 class. Congratulations. You were wrong, but it was ultimately a big win. So, and that's no hate to Jets fans. It happens all the time. I've had same thing happen as a Steelers fan. It happens to every fan base. It happens to every NFL draft, fan. So there's more than a 0% chance that CJ Stroud is quarterback 4 and falls a little bit beyond pick 1 or 2 where it feels like most mocks have him going. And if he does make it to 6, I think this is the exact type of outcome, even more so than if this was Will Levis. If Stroud or Young were to fall to 6, I think Tennessee would be hitting up Detroit at 6, and maybe if they want to stick and pick and take a defensive cornerstone, then the Raiders at 7. I think Tennessee would be trying to make a move for one of those guys. So love this outcome. There's more than a 0% chance that Stroud does fall a little bit, and I think Tennessee would jump all over it, fully set the hit the reset button, move on from Tannehill, free up some cap space, and continue to kind of retool this roster. And where I say Arizona's probably a 2-year retool. If this were the pick for Tennessee, I think they'd be competitive in the South this year, but then give it one more offseason, they could put themselves in a position to go toe-to-toe for years to come with Jacksonville. Then the Raiders take Devin Witherspoon. Love this fit. To me, Gonzalez is CB1, but it's razor thin between him and Witherspoon. It really comes down to upside versus floor. And Witherspoon definitely comes with the higher floor. I think he's NFL ready. A little bit smaller, but crazy, 3-cone showing, 4.42 40. And you see the acceleration on tape. I mean, he's just a well-rounded athlete. Good tackler, hard hitter. I think he's scheme versatile. So for defensive coordinator Patrick Graham, who's going to mix it up between various zones, and then he's going to run some man coverage, I think Witherspoon is a perfect plug-and-play CD1 for that defense. And when you play in a division with Justin Herbert and hopefully a resurgent Russell Wilson, for the love of God, please don't be as bad as they were last year, Denver. Please, I need you to see you to take a step forward this year. Oh, and not to mention Patrick Mahomes plays in the AFC West. So having that number one shutdown corner is going to go a long way in the AFC West. Then the Falcons take Peter Skoronski. Interesting. I haven't seen this in a mock in quite some time. This could be a really fun Elijah Wilkins upgrade, especially if you view Skoronski as a guard. I mean, he's the best guard in this class then, and he's an upgrade over Wilkinson. And with how much Atlanta asked their offensive linemen to move, Skoronski, to me, the best blocking tackle or guard. He's just the best blocking offensive lineman in this class on the move. So from that standpoint, makes a ton of sense. Do you want to use the 8th overall pick on a guard? But I will say, if you look at WAR, and basically WAR is the easiest stat, and then value added if you want to look at contracts and whatnot. But high-end elite guards bring about as much value as good tackles, and that's kind of where you get into a tough conversation with Skoronski. What's more valuable, him being a great guard or him being a good tackle? They're about the same, but if he's a great tackle, then that does come with more value. So it really comes down to how you feel about Skoronski there. But if they're drafting him in mind at 8 to be an Elijah Wilkinson upgrade at left guard, and we're just going to have this insane, perfect run blocking unit for that Arthur Smith run scheme, it could be OP. Plus, obviously, pretty solid pass protector. One of the best pass protectors in college football over the last couple of years as a starter at Northwestern. That certainly goes a long way to seeing more out of Desmond Ridder. Bears then take Kalijah Cansey. I'm thinking about having Cansey go top 10 in my mock this weekend, too. So I'm pondering this, and this is kind of moving me in that direction. I mean, this would be the disruptive 3-tech that the Bears could add, other than Jalen Carter. This would be the guy. If you're looking for a true disruptor, a guy that's going to shoot gaps, get in between offensive linemen, and also great with his hands, gets into offensive linemen before they're out of their stance on his tape at Pitt, Kalijah Cansey's your guy. Obviously not the same body type whatsoever compared to a DeForest Buckner, but just because there's different body types doesn't mean you can't get the same results. So this would be a really, really fascinating play here. Could you maybe trade back and look to add him a little bit later? Sure, but it takes 2 to tango. And, if you don't have people, calling your line, then only so much you could do. You stick and pick here at 9. It's an interesting thought. And it does give Eberflus that disruptive 3-tech that he's looking to add. Eagles take Brian Branch. This makes a lot of sense. Kind of a seamless Chauncey Gardner-Johnson replacement. Can play that nickel corner, strong safety hybrid. I even think Brian Branch could play free safety. I know 4.5, 140 isn't off the charts, but I think he plays faster than that. Sound tackler, great man, great in zone. I think you could even use him as a blitzer. I mean, this is just the continuation of what Chauncey Gardner-Johnson did for Philadelphia last year, but just you have 4 plus the 5th-year option, years worth of control, and he's a lot cheaper than Chauncey Gardner-Johnson will be. Even 1-year deal this year in Detroit, and then I assume another contract coming that's going to come with a pretty sizable chunk of change going his way. Then we get the Lions after the trade back, landing Joey Porter Jr. This is kind of awesome. Really big win there for Detroit. You get extra assets, which will make Brad Holmes happy. And then you still get a guy who's a perfect fit for that defense. Aaron Glenn wants to run a lot of man press, and that's exactly what Joey Porter Jr. brings to the table. At 6'2.5", 34-inch arms, 4.45 speed is plenty. I worry a little bit about maybe the change of direction, but there's enough else in the profile of Joey Porter Jr. to have him be in that CB1 tier for me. Perfect scheme fit for Detroit. You gain extra assets, and then you're future-proofing this position, whether Emmanuel Mosley comes back or not, whether Chauncey Gardner-Johnson comes back or not, and whether Jeff Okudah works out or not. This just makes sure that you have answers there in the secondary for Detroit, which will go a long way. Texans then take JSN. I'm really starting to come around to this. It kind of makes John Mechie III a little redundant, but even the highest slot percentage in his career, Robert Woods, is at 56%. And that was actually with the Rams. So depending on how you feel about him post-injury, can he still play on the outside? I think maybe. Have him be on the outside, Collins, and then JSN is your volume guy to the slot. I'm kind of falling in love with this. I've seen this in other mocks, and we've reacted to it. We've graded mocks with this type of selection. And I didn't hate it before, but now I'm starting to think, if Robert Woods, if they think he's still got that step and that enough athleticism to hang on the outside, this makes all the sense in the world. And I think you could still have JSN be the volume guy, and Robert Woods is just someone who plays on the outside. So JSN is the number 1 option for Houston. Dude, yeah, again, it's kind of hard not to love that. And 6'5", 7'3" cone. I mean, the skills and the tape kind of speak for itself. JSN may not be the fastest long speed guy, but he's so quick in and out of breaks, and he's so explosive. And plus, 6'1", right around 200 pounds. He plays with enough power to be a solid yak weapon as well. So I'm really starting to come around to JSN to Houston at 12. Paris Johnson Jr. then to the Jets. This would be a huge win. He's my OT1. Also played right guard 2 years ago with the Ohio State Buckeyes, so maybe he flips over to right tackle. This really comes down to how they feel about Mekhi Becton. I think in a perfect world, if you're a Jets fan, Becton's healthy, Paris Johnson Jr., that's your tackle duo, and then Max Mitchell's kind of your ultimate swing tackle. You can move on from Dwayne Brown, who's getting old, and Fant's a free agent right now, so I think that's the best case scenario, but I could also see a world where it's like, we're going to roll with Paris Johnson Jr., Max Mitchell, move on from Benton, or Becton, sorry. Or we're going to roll with Brown and Johnson, and then Max Mitchell's our swing. I could see it ultimately playing out that way, but I think in a perfect world, Mekhi Becton, Paris Johnson Jr., that is a huge upside type of play on the offensive line. And man, if those guys stay healthy, they should be a tandem that puts a big smile on Aaron Rodgers' face. Once he's there, of course. Deontay Banks then to the Patriots. So Banks ahead of Christian Gonzalez. I know Sam Monson's not crazy about Christian Gonzalez, and I understand that. Deontay Banks, man, Maryland plays a variety of coverages, so they really do showcase his athletic ability. 4.35 speed, and not only is he a good athlete, it's seen on tape. Like, you absolutely can see where this guy is a freaky athlete. Also good size, 6 foot, 200 pounds, has man coverage upside written all over him. And again, good enough athlete and familiarity in zone coverages to where he is not going to be a liability or any concern there from that standpoint. So whether the Patriots want to run more man or they want to play more zone like they have the last couple of years, I think Banks fits in. And what's interesting, it's like you play in a division similar to what we were talking about with Devin Witherspoon going to the Raiders. Like, the Patriots get to see, quote unquote, get to see Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill twice a year. They get to see Stephon Diggs twice a season. And it's like, man, that number one shutdown corner. Not that I think Jonathan Jones is bad or Jack Jones is terrible. And I'm excited about Marcus Jones stepping in that slot role hopefully this year. It's just like, man, if you have that number one shutdown guy, how much easier is your competition in the division? Like, how much more of those games can you win? Can you steal one from the Dolphins? Can you steal one from the Jets, Garrett Wilson, and now you're getting Aaron Rodgers? How could I forget those, right? Like, that number one top tier corner might go a long way, even though I know the corners they already have are already solid. But I think having that top tier shutdown guy could come in handy big time. And Banks has that upside. Packers draft Dalton Kincaid. If there is a year where Green Bay is going to go pass catcher, it is this year, just for Brian Gutekunst to stick it to Aaron Rodgers. Kincaid would be a really interesting fit and a big-time upgrade there at tight end for Green Bay. In a perfect world, I would have this be Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's your volume guy to the slot. Watson becomes this dynamic second option, and then Dobbs, crisp route runner. Can we fix up the drops issue? Because if so, him as a third is really enticing as well. But do I think they do it? Ultimately, I don't. But it is really fun to think about, and I've seen this in a ton of mocks. We've already talked about it a lot here on the channel. So go ahead and move on. Talk about Anton Harrison going to the Washington Commanders. I'm a big Anton Harrison guy. I love how polished he is in pass protection. 3-year starter at Oklahoma. Good athlete as well. Sure, probably stands to add a little bit of strength into his profile, but I think he can do it at the NFL level. And I think he already got a little bit stronger this last year at Oklahoma. So I think he's making strides in that direction, and he is one of the younger tackles in this year's class. It's not like he's 4 or 5 year starter or anything. 3 years, so younger side. And Charles Leno, no guarantee he can play forever and ever. And maybe they even want to move Andrew Wiley inside to play guard, and maybe Sam Cosmi moves over to left guard. And maybe this is kind of the roundabout way. You play Harrison at right tackle, right? Wiley moves inside to guard, and maybe he's a little bit better than what we've seen at tackle the last few seasons. Cosmi moves over to the left side. Can he be an Andrew Norwell replacement? Maybe. Again, maybe this is kind of the roundabout way to fixing that offensive line, but I like the value there, honestly. I'm a big Anton Harrison believer, so I think the consensus is Broderick Jones, Paris Johnson Jr., Peter Skoronski, but ultimately whoever lands Anton Harrison is going to be really, really happy with that pick. Steelers then take Broderick Jones. So again, I have Harrison as my OT3, Broderick Jones is my OT4, so it's kind of cool to see board play out that way. I also think Broderick Jones is way more of what the Steelers are looking for versus Anton Harrison. I think they want that mauler, big bodied, strong guy more than the fleet of foot, good athlete, and I think that does come at the expense of pass protection. That's why I have Harrison ranked ahead of Broderick Jones, but that's my board, not the Steelers. And apparently, Mike Tomlin and the front office doing the work on DeJuan Jones and Broderick Jones. So yeah, I think they want to add someone that looks like Broderick Jones or DeJuan Jones, or even Darnell Wright that has that insane strength in his profile, over someone like an Anton Harrison. So I think this is kind of the direction they're leaning. And any upgrade the Steelers can add at tackle, which is by far the weakest links they have in their offensive line, left and right tackle, I'll take it. You got to build the picket fence, and hopefully if Broderick Jones is the pick here, you flip Dan Moore over to the right side. Maybe he creates a camp battle, maybe he doesn't. But worst comes to worst, he's going into his third year. Maybe he takes a step forward and becomes a solid swing tackle, which that is a very valuable add to the roster right now, especially when you already don't have a great offensive line. Then the Lions take Christian Gonzalez. So Gonzalez eventually does come off the board, and kind of worst case scenario, this makes sense. Now, what's fascinating about this is Detroit has now added in the first round Joey Porter Jr. and Christian Gonzalez. So a lot of times I'll talk about, hey, I want to see the Lions still add a corner because I want to future-proof the position. I mean, this is future-proofing the position on steroids right here. This is saying, hey, Okuda's not going to work. The Cam Sutton's going to play the nickel, and then we're not going to bring back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson or Emmanuel Mosley. Like, it's going to be Gonzalez, Porter Jr., and Cam Sutton. Now, that being said, with only having the draft perception that I have about Gonzalez and Porter, who are both in my tier 1 of cornerbacks, and they are respectively Gonzalez CB1, Porter is CB3, and then Cam Sutton, Steelers fan, I like him a lot, especially as a nickel. That secondary sounds kind of insane to me. So could this work out? Yeah, and ultimately it could create one of the most insane secondaries and cornerback trios in football. Do I think it's what the Lions do? No, I don't think they double down at corner. So if you're a Lions fan, let me know. Like, where would you be at? Scale of 1 to 10. What would you rate a double, cornerback first round haul? I'd be curious to hear your sights on that. And I mean, I like the edge rotation. Still think they can add that 3 tech, that 3-4 D end to bolster the inside. But hey, I'm not against doubling down at corner, and it's definitely an upside play. And hey, if those guys work out, you're talking about 2 insanely cheap corners playing on the outside, and then you're paying a little bit of money to Cam Sutton, but still relatively cheap secondary. Bucks then take Lucas Van Ness. He falls a little bit. Inside-out flexibility here is interesting. Could he maybe get some Logan Hall snaps there on the inside? I think that's a possibility, but also could be, the kind of that strength, bull rusher that this team, Joe Tryon-Shinka has a little bit of that, but he's more of the high-end athlete that wins with finesse. And then Shaq Barrett is definitely more of a speed rusher than power rusher. Van Ness kind of brings that different skill set, and, let's be honest, Shaq Barrett coming off a pretty big injury. How much more gas does he have in the tank? Probably a year or 2, if I had to speculate. So Van Ness, Joe Tryon-Shinka, I think it's a really fun edge duo moving forward. So that inside-out versatility is really fascinating. I wonder what they would do with his body and what role they kind of have for him in mind if they were to make that pick. But to me, him and Joe Tryon-Shinka as that edge duo moving forward, I'd be excited about that if I was a Bucs fan. Seattle then takes Jordan Addison. Yeah, this one makes a lot of sense. Inside-out versatility. And then if Lockett goes down, you feel comfortable moving him out wide. I think he plays faster than his 40 time, both at the Combine and Pro Day. Or actually, I don't think he ran at the Pro Day, but I think he runs and plays faster than 4.49. Showed up some of the drops this past year at USC, was a bit of an issue at Pitt, but crisp route runner, knows how to get open. I mean, need I say more? And then you add in the freaky ability and downfield threat that is DK Metcalf. They kind of create a nice 1-2 punch there. And then, let's say Tyler Lockett stays healthy. That trio of Metcalf, Lockett, Addison, that is a really good three wide receivers to have. And man, if you're trying to add more to Geno Smith and say, hey, last year was an anomaly, adding one more wide receiver would go a long way for good measure, basically making sure that Geno has everything he needs to play at that level he did last year. And again, also Tyler Lockett insurance. When he went down, the offense did lose kind of a step and kind of work backwards. So adding Addison here is kind of that insurance policy that, hey, we always will have, barring something catastrophic here, we'll have 2 wide receivers that can, hold down the fort, so to speak. Chargers then take Quentin Johnston. I've had this in a mock, and dude, just build a basketball team. Why don't you, right? Like 6'3" Quentin Johnston, 6'3", 6'4" Mike Williams, 6'2", 6'3" Keenan Allen. Like, sheesh, height for days. But it's really about adding that speed and that over-the-top weapon. in addition to, 4'6", 4'7", Keenan Allen, 4'5", Mike Williams, 4'5", Josh Palmer. So adding that speed that this team just doesn't have right now. So I'm very interested by this. And then also, Kellen Moore did a whole lot of, yards after the catch stuff with CeeDee Lamb. And while I think Keenan Allen can do some of that, Quentin Johnson is slippery with the ball in his hands, and he's a great satellite player, and he's this great satellite prospect from that standpoint. So could he take some of that, could he have some of those targets come his way? Could he kind of fill that CeeDee Lamb-ish type of underneath yards after the catch role within that offense? I think he could. Then we get the Ravens taking Nolan Smith. Yeah, so Smith falls a little bit. This would be a fun tandem with him and David Ojabo. Feels like there's some skill set overlap there, but Nolan Smith stops the run so well that I think you can make it work, despite him and Ojabo both maybe being on the lighter side. But that could create an edge duo that the Ravens just haven't really had over the last couple of seasons. So I think this is really good value. And it kind of feels like a guy who fits in with that culture, kind of a no-nonsense, good leader. It just kind of feels like he's a guy you can add to a contender, and then that team just gets that much more legit. And obviously the Ravens adding Odell Beckham Jr. I still don't think Zay Flowers should be out of the question here. Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, OBJ. Now we're talking. Plus Mark Andrews. That's an offense I'm scared of. But Nolan Smith here, definitely another way to address another area of need for Baltimore. Kansas City trades up. This is interesting. And moving back is Minnesota. I think that makes a lot of sense. I've actually had these two teams trade in previous mocks. And then the Vikings landed Addison at 31. I had the Chiefs move up to draft JSN. He's off the board here. Darnell Wright also makes a lot of sense. This comes down to how you feel about Darian Kennard. Can Kennard play tackle? I think he can, and I'd be excited to see him play there. But if it ends up being Darnell Wright, okay, I'm fine with that as well. Pair him up with Jawan Taylor. I think that's a really solid bookend tackle duo. We saw this team kind of post-Super Bowl loss to the Bucs say, we are not going to have offensive line be the issue that keeps us away from another ring. So this would kind of be the furthering of that mission statement. And I think 23 for Darnell Wright after the recent hype he's had, solid value. Tyree Wilson finally comes off the board to the Jags. Yeah, I know Monson is not crazy about Tyree Wilson. And look, I mean, he didn't break out till his 5th year. I understand that. We haven't seen him do anything other than weigh in and show that he's 6'6" with an 86-inch arm span. We don't know what the 40 is. We don't know what the 3-cone is. And maybe he's not doing those drills for a reason, but I've also heard that he's going to have his own private pro day basically. So we'll see. If he has some twitchy numbers and puts up gaudy athletic testing stuff, then that argument kind of goes by the wayside. But maybe he's also kind of pushing it off because he knows, hey, that's not really why I should be drafted in the top 10. It's because I'm big, tall, and strong, right, and got those long arms. So here at 24, this would be extreme value. Now, granted, if you were to ask me, hey, who's going to be this year's Jermaine Johnson? Who's that edge rusher that's kind of in that top 10, consideration? Will Anderson, Lucas Van Ness, Nolan Smith, and Tyree Wilson. Let's say it's those 4. Which one of them is the most likely to fall? I mean, I can see Van Ness just because we haven't seen him on the edge and Nolan Smith coming off the injury, but I think Tyree Wilson makes a lot of sense because, again, it wasn't until his 5th year that he broke out, and we don't know what, some of those other athletic testing numbers are at right now. So I can see it. I can totally see him being the guy that catching top 10 hype right now, but then ultimately goes somewhere in the late teens to 20s. I could see it. I think it's more than a 0% chance that happens, and it's a good addition there for the Jags, adding some additional depth at edge. And with no Brian Branch on the board, I can let it pass. Then they get the Giants taking John Michael Schmitz. This makes a ton of sense. Address one of the last major, absolute must-address spots on that offensive line. Hopefully Josh Azudu takes a step forward at left guard in year 2, but JMS, great reach blocker, can get on the move and, kind of pave the way. I think he's a good fit for that Dayball Kafka blocking scheme then. Plays with a mean strength, is strong enough despite just being over 300 pounds. He plays bigger and stronger, more physical than that. And again, it's kind of the last problem spot on that offensive line for the Giants. And, over this last 2 to 3 off seasons, feels like if you added JMS, you kind of finish that retool of the O-line. Bijan goes to Dallas, and the Super Bowl parade can get underway in Dallas. I think Jerry Jones. I think once we get to the teens and Bijan's on the board, I think Jerry and Stephen Jones are making calls. So something to keep in the back of your mind before my upcoming mock this weekend. And plus, I've done that in other mocks as well. But if they don't have to move up and Bijan falls into their lap at 26, that is a win right there for the Joneses, I guess. But are there other areas they can go? Yeah, but, I think they're kind of a team that's afforded the luxury of being able to go running back here. They added Brandon Cooks. They added Stephon Gilmore, so they've already addressed some of their major needs. They could add another linebacker, but you could also do that on day 2 of the draft. This is not a great linebacker class, so maybe you decide to wait. Maybe you decide to, take a swing of the bat early. I can see it really break out either way. You do get Leighton Vander Esch back, which helps ease some of those concerns for that position group. Mozzie Smith's a little tempting here, but Bijan, yeah, I mean, pair him up with Tony Pollard, and that's an awesome 1-2 punch. Plus the receiving upside that comes with Bijan, I think it makes it an easy sell there for the Cowboys. Bills then take Cam Smith. This would be, I mean, you can never have too many perimeter players. Like I will tell you, always add wide receivers, always add corners. That is just my bias. Those are my favorite positions to watch and evaluate. So I am coming at this with a little bit of a bias. But man, Cam Smith, Trey White, Kyer Elam, that's a pretty awesome trio. Plus you got Benford, got Dane Jackson there. Like you can't. I mean, what are some of the things that could cost the Bills the Super Bowl this year? Offensive line injuries and secondary injuries. So adding depth at both those spots makes a ton of sense. Now, granted, when it comes to their interior offensive line, they could still add starters there. So, maybe Osiris Torrance is kind of calling my name here, but or Steve Avila or whatever their offensive line preference is there. But hey, I don't think you can go wrong adding more depth to the cornerback room and just, hey, Trey White, we've seen him miss time. Kyer Elam wasn't insane as a rookie, so no guarantee that first round pick is a hit. So go ahead and just make sure you have answers there just in case questions start to arise. The Bengals then draft Michael Mayer. I love this fit. Not quite the blocker that Darnell Washington is, at least in a phone booth. And I could see out on the move where Washington's athleticism is better suited for that. But I also think he's kind of, this is weird to say, I think Washington's more battle tested as a blocker inside the a phone booth. So I think he's a little bit better there. But great movement skill, so hard to deny that he'd be better than Michael Mayer on the move. But nevertheless, more pass catching upside here with Michael Mayer and someone you can trust more there. More polished route runner, better hands. Dude, like Michael Mayer is not like the most insane separator. I say he's a good route runner because I think he can find the soft spots in the zone. He can separate. But because he runs 4.7, which is kind of middle of the road tight end speed, he's not like absolutely leaving guys in the dust. But you give this guy a contested catch opportunity, Michael Mayer is coming down with it. Like it's 80-20 balls with this guy. So put him over the middle of the field, let him work between the hashes. It's a great future Tyler Boyd replacement, and also addressing a big area where they can get better. And the blocking upside, hometown kid. There's a lot of different ways to sell this pick to Cincy fans, in my opinion. Saints then draft Myles Murphy. He's totally their type, and here he just falls into their lap at 29. Would love to see this happen for New Orleans. It's a position they always have coveted. With Marcus Davenport leaving, they have a little bit of a hole there in that third edge rush spot. And Myles Murphy also, could start out as this, third pass rusher, but by, year 3 of his rookie contract, maybe he figures it out and then he becomes a great Cam Jordan replacement. So I think it serves two different needs. You find that third edge rusher right now. You let Murphy kind of build up that pass rush arsenal over 2 seasons. Then maybe he becomes that Cam Jordan replacement that, eventually that bell is going to be rung. So you're going to have to find an answer there. Last 2 picks. The Philadelphia Eagles draft Jack Campbell. So our first off-ball linebacker comes off the board. And it's crazy. I'm telling myself last week, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have Jack Campbell go in the first round. He's going to be my first off-ball linebacker. Spoiler, that is going to happen this weekend. But then I see Bengal mock him to the Bills, and now I got Sam Monson mock him to the Eagles, which, by the way, Eagles won't draft a linebacker in the first round more than likely, but that would be a fantastic pairing. Him and Nakobe Dean, that would be awesome. And totally hide some of the weaknesses that Nakobe Dean has while addressing a under-talked-about need right now for Philadelphia. And for the Bills, it would make a ton of sense, too. So everyone else is kind of coming around to this thinking, unfortunately, so I am not going to be the first to it. But it's okay. I still have a kind of a fun idea in mind for it. But, yeah, I think the fit makes a ton of sense. Will Howie Roseman do it? But no, it doesn't really matter because I think this would be an awesome addition. And you pair him up with Nakobe Dean, I think that's an awesome 1-2 tandem there. And, again, I think their skill sets perfectly match up. Dean, freaky athlete. Campbell, good athlete, great 3-cone. But, Dean then on the smaller side. Campbell has prototypical size. Yeah. I think it's a great 1-2 punch there in the middle. Then the Vikings draft Brian Brzee. They definitely need to get better on the inside. I used to say this about Green Bay all the time. If you have Dean Lowry starting, you got to change that. And now he plays in Minnesota, and he's projected to be a starter on the inside. So you got to change that. Also, I like Kyrus Tonga, but he ended up going the 6th round, which I think kind of tells you how the league feels about him. But, maybe there's more to, his game, and Minnesota is going to get, to tap into that. And we're going to really see him kind of blossom. Or you're going to have a big issue there at nose tackle. And, Brian Brzee could help, alleviate some of those concerns. I do think you're getting a pretty good run defender right away. Great size, good athletic ability as well. Not many guys, 6'5", 300+ pounds, move the way Brian Brzee does. So you're going to have to buy him some time as a pass rusher. But you look at, currently, the edge set that Minnesota has on our lads. Right now, Zadarius Smith's still there. That's still a little bit of a TBD after the guy tweets like, I'm gone, bye, before they officially release him. A little bit of a head scratcher. But Marcus Davenport and Danielle Hunter, assuming that Danielle Hunter is still going to be back, I think that could be an edge to him that buys Brzee the time to, hey, just be a high-level run defender, help us out right there, and then year or two in your career, we're going to expect you to take that step forward as a pass rusher. I could totally see this is a good landing spot for him and also addresses some needs that Minnesota has right now. But that is going to do it for my reaction to Sam Monson's latest 2023 NFL mock draft. Honestly, I think this was a pretty fun one, some interesting ideas, and it pushed it, it's not insane. It's not like, I don't really think that's going to happen. But while also giving you some new things to kind of think about, I'll go with a 91. I think this was really solid. Maybe Skoronski not really, in on the board there at 8 for Atlanta, considering they have other needs on defense, and doubling down on corner for Detroit is a really, really fun idea. But I don't know if they'd actually do it. So I'll go 91, though. I really like the ideas that Monson brought up here in this mock, and I think a lot of the other picks make a ton of sense. So, let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. What would you grade this mock? On a scale of 1 to 100, or A, B, C, D, or F? What would you grade it down below in the comment section? Let me hear your thoughts. Also, who's your favorite team? And you like the pick that Monson gave your squad? But be sure to hit that like button if you guys enjoyed today's video. Subscribe if you're new, looking for more draft content. And until next time, my name is Teach, and I am signing off.